All right, guys, welcome to this new podcast, the Doron Keidar podcast. This has been a very long in waiting project that I've been wanting to do for many years now, and finally have been able to muster up the courage to just go ahead and do it. There's people from all over the world that have been approaching me, following me for many years on everything related to Israel. I get messages all the time, questions all the time, hard questions that basically people are struggling with, especially because there's such a growing number of Israel haters throughout the years, and misinformation and stuff like that. And so people that really want to stand with Israel, support Israel, they just feel like, well, there's so many claims against Israel, so much propaganda, and like, how do you settle with this and this and this accusation? And so what I've decided to do is, instead of just messaging people and giving them information and equipping them with knowledge from the ground, from here in Israel, boots on the ground, is to help equip them with knowledge now for the masses through this podcast. So we're hoping this is going to get viral. We're hoping that people are going to share this. So you're responsible if you were equipped with knowledge and information that was helpful, that was spot on. If there's anything I've said that is incorrect as well, by the way, please hold me accountable. Unlike many opinion makers out there, people are afraid from being corrected. I'm not afraid of being corrected. If I'm wrong on something, I want to be held accountable and I want to be corrected, because the whole point of this podcast is to give truth out there for people to be armed with, so that they can share this truth with others who are misinformed. There's a lot of propaganda, a lot of misinformation out there, and my goal with this podcast is to arm you with truth. And that's what we're all about. This podcast was actually motivated as well through this last war in Gaza that we have fought since October 7th, and it's actually still ongoing, unfortunately. But me and my guys have been called up on the first day of the war, and one of my teammates, his brother, who was a platoon commander from actually the unit that I started in Givati, and he got called up with his unit as well. They went fighting, clearing houses, and doing a lot of good work with the war effort to fight back the terrorists, and even got in some very very close calls in combating the terrorists and eliminating the terrorists that they had run into, that were hiding in homes here in Israel after they crossed the border and went on their killing spree, and so on. So this podcast is actually dedicated to the memory of this young man, because he was still a relatively young man when he fell in battle. Eventually, he fell in battle fighting in Gaza with his unit. They got ambushed, and it was a sad ending to a hero who really laid down his life for this nation. But that's what this podcast is dedicated for, is people like him. And his motto was "Facta non verba," which is actions, not words. And that was tattooed on his arm. And most of the guys in my unit, I don't know if most, but a good number of them, in solidarity of our fellow teammate and brother, we had this tattooed on ourselves as well. I'm one of the exceptions. I'm the religious guy in the group. So unfortunately, I'm just saying, I don't get to, I don't put on tattoos because of the Torah regulations that we're forbidden from doing that. But this dedication to this gentleman, this warrior, is through this podcast. It's going to be part of the theme, because that's what this podcast is going to be about, is bringing people who are not opinion makers. They're not armchair experts, okay, that sit there in a studio or on the news broadcasting or giving their opinions online somewhere. This is about the people who are the man in the arena. Okay, I'm the man in the arena right now during this war. These men are the men in the arena during this war, my fellow teammates and my fellow warriors that fought with me in Gaza. And that's what this podcast is dedicated to, is highlighting people like that. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring people who have a field experience in in whatever is being talked about on Israel as of late. So right now it's the war in Gaza. The biggest claim right now, and false claim against Israel, is that we're committing a genocide. If we were committing a genocide, let me just ask a few questions, okay? Like for you to think about. If Israel were committing a genocide, if the IDF were just mowing down people left and right and carpet bombing them and whatever, why is it that we're taking so stinking long? Have you ever thought of that? We're 5 months plus into this conflict. We're coming up to 6 months. Does it really take us a half a year to annihilate such a small amount of people in a very small area, relatively small area? And trust me, Israel has the capabilities to wipe out the Gaza Strip within days. Okay, it wouldn't take us very long if we were to use our full military might and air capabilities and not send in one soldier like the man that I just mentioned. His name was Ilya, by the way. Ilya was, like I said, a warrior that led his men. He led his men in battle and risked his life. And just like the rest of us, myself included, we have risked our lives in our military operations in order to prevent the death of civilians. That's what we have done. That's a fact, okay? The reason why it's taking us so long is because of that very fact that we're trying to prevent the loss of innocence in Gaza. And while at the same time, you need to understand too that when operating in Gaza, for many of us, we've come under the terrifying, daunting realization that it feels like there's no innocence in Gaza. All right, so we're going out of our way to defend innocence, while every home that we clear has terrorist paraphernalia, has flags, has mugs with terrorists on them, and whatnot. And so you have a lot of propaganda, school books, and like every part of the lives of the Palestinians in Gaza is bathed in terrorism, bathed in propaganda against Israel, dehumanizing Jews, and teaching them how to kill Jews. And so when we experience that and we've walked through that, that's been my experience, it really is daunting. It's like, so why are we taking our time to not kill any innocents here when it seems like the citizens, okay, the normal citizens, the non-terrorist, full-blown terrorists that go get training, whatever, why is it that they are all involved and supportive, and they're like the supportive troops, okay? Just like in war, for me, I need somebody to support me in battle, in combat. I need someone to supply me with bullets and water and whatever. So those are the supply units. So they're not the full combatants that you would, full-blown combatants, but still they are part of the military effort, right? So they're not bystanders. They're not, like our civilians who are hiding. I forget the exact number, but it's tens of thousands are living in relocated positions in Israel, in hotels now for months. They're not the ones who are fighting in Gaza or in the northern border with Hezbollah or in Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, where there's also been a rise of terrorism. So we're actually fighting a multi-front war here, and we have our civilians, and then we have our war fighters, and we have our supportive troops, and so on and so forth, right? So there's a clear distinction between all of those. In Gaza, there is no clear distinction. And that is why I'm saying, to me, is very daunting, very sad. Just to think about, if my children were raised in this kind of reality, I don't expect them to be anything other than pro-death, pro-murder, pro-terrorism, pro-Hamas, or whatever terrorist organization. And just the thought of that your children are basically being given over to this evil, given over to this death society that promotes death over life, that's sad. That is catastrophic. Okay, that's horrible, and that's actually what led to the October 7th attack, where we had nearly 3,000 terrorists cross the border, and out of those 3,000, about half of them were regular civilians, yeah, that took part in the raping and the murdering and the torture of our civilians and the kidnapping of our civilians, bringing them into Gaza. Our kidnapped people were held hostage in homes. So imagine this picture, okay? You have a family over here having dinner. Hey Timmy, how's school? Reality, and right in the room next door is your hostage. Okay, this is the kind of conditions that our hostages were held in, like legit a family, a normal family. Okay, it's not normal, yeah, but their normal is that is holding hostage our people. And when I heard that, it just blew my mind. I was like, dude, that's messed up. And that's the stuff that you're not hearing on the media. Instead, what you're hearing about is poor Palestinian children being pulled out of the rubble, and they're actually showing you footage from other wars or earthquakes, not even related to a war at all, footage, and they pump that out on the media, and they say genocide. Israel's committed genocide. Well, remember, we didn't attack on October 7th, and people say that Hamas. If we could only have a ceasefire. Well, we didn't raise any weapons at all before October 7th. Okay, we would defend ourselves on and off because Gaza has been a serious problem for the safety and security of our civilians for years now, since the pullout in 2005. And by the way, I served in the Gaza Strip leading up to that time as well. So I remember when we were in Gaza, my unit was the Gaza unit, where I started my military service, and then we pulled out of Gaza. And I was actually one of the few that refused to take part in having anything to do with pulling civilians out of their homes and taking part of that. To me, that's policing. And so I made my request, and I didn't make any big show about it. I just said, listen, this is not what I volunteered for, because at the time I was a volunteer. And so any case, it's a long story. I'm not going to get into it, but I was very fortunate not to have to take part in evacuating Jews out of their homes that I seriously protested against, if you will, like as far as my moral positioning on that issue. So let's talk about some of these issues that on this podcast. We're also going to have, by the way, an interview that I did out in the field with one of our top operators in the military, good friend of mine, and so that will be something for you to look forward to. But as I just try to handle some of these issues before we go to our interview that we have for this podcast, I wanted to cover a few things. So, like I said, one of the claims is that Israel's committing a genocide. Well, let's look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. All right. According to Lord Andrew Roberts, who is a British war historian, he's covered wars that are happening all over the world. The war in Ukraine, of course, Afghanistan, Iraq, all the modern wars that you're familiar with, and World War I, II, etc. He's a war historian, and he stated at the British Parliament, he made this speech, and in defense of the IDF, actually, which is surprising because I've seen, like I said, there's been so much propaganda against Israel, against the military, that we're committing all these atrocities when it couldn't be farther from the truth. And for me personally, I take that personal, because you can't say stuff like this. And like I said, if you're not the man in the arena, if you're not the one your civilians are the ones who are under threat, being murdered and tortured and treated the way that has been happening, and the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. We're not talking about a small occasion here. This is no small deal. This is a very big deal. And then to hammer and to beat down the victim more just because we have a strong military and are able to defend ourselves, that's twisted in your, if you have that kind of thinking, that's twisted. That's sick. You're demented if you think that. I would never go accuse a raped girl for dressing like a slut and say, well, because you dress like a slut, that's why that dude raped you. You should know better. Bro, like, seriously? Not that I think women should, dress provocatively, whatever, but at the end of the day, the one who commits the crime is the one who commits the crime. It's like saying, well, for the thief, well, if you had put up better security systems in your diamond shop, I would have stole your diamonds. So it's your fault that I stole your diamonds. You understand? Like, you made it provocative enough for me to steal. These are stupid claims. But in any case, that aside, according to Lord Andrew Roberts, who is a British historian, he made this statement. Even if we took Hamas figures, right, like we take their figures, which they claimed at the time when he said this, this was about 2 weeks ago, he says the figures now, they're claiming 27,500 Palestinians killed, right, by the IDF. And they're claiming these are all civilians, of course. And he says, so taking that number, their number, he says, less than 2 to 1 is an astonishing low ratio. That's the ratio, 2 to 1. The ratio here, he's saying, is a modern urban warfare. Excuse me. So what he's saying is this. Let me try to just read how he says this. He says 27,500 killed. Less than 2 to 1 is an astonishing low ratio for modern urban warfare where the terrorists routinely use human shields. So taking into account that they're taking human shields and using them to defend themselves, they're using their own people, right? And we've seen this. I've seen this fighting in the Strip. I fought 4.5 months in Gaza against the terrorists, and we saw this. And then he says, it's a testament to the professionalism, ethics, and values of the IDF. The fact that it's such a low number, like he's saying, basically what he's claiming, okay, is that nothing like this has happened in modern warfare as far as ratio is concerned in these numbers. And that far more civilians have been killed during the U.S. war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the war with Russia and Ukraine, for example, how many civilians are being killed there, and so on. So that right there is a testament, like he said, to the IDF's professionalism, ethics, and values. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. The IDF, my friends, and being one who has had the privilege of serving in the IDF and served in the armed forces, okay, not just in whatever, but like in armed conflict, for over 20 years now has been my personal experience. I've served in Gaza. I served in Judea, Samaria, which is known as the West Bank. I've served up on the Lebanese border with Lebanon during the Second Lebanon War and all the in-between wars, etc. So since 2003 till today, I've fought in every war that the IDF has been involved in to defend us against constant attacks against the state of Israel. And so I can tell you through my personal experience that our military, and also through my personal experience with knowing other militaries from around the world, talking to other operators and generals and commanders, and trust me, I've spoken to some very high up generals in the U.S. military and also in European militaries. I'm not going to give names because, again, there's there is a certain level of professionalism that you just don't go throwing out all these names and say, I know this person, but I guarantee you if I were to give you some of the names, you know these names, okay? These are very, very high up individuals. Part of that is because of my work with executive protection and have been providing personal protection for a lot of these individuals as well. Any case, all that aside, What I'm trying to tell you is that every time I sit with any of these professionals, okay, they tell me that the IDF's rules of engagement are insane. They're like, we would never do that because it's too harmful for our soldiers. It puts our soldiers at too high of a risk. It's not worth it for us. On Israel's flip side, we believe that if we put ourselves in harm's way in order to alleviate any collateral damage or civilians being hurt, non-combatives, in our war operations, we prefer to put our men and our women in harm's way to defend the local population where the combat is taking place in. Because unfortunately, the terrorists, they play dirty. They're not going to meet you on the battlefield. They're going to draw you in, like Andrew pointed out, that they use human shields. That's exactly what they do. They draw you into the urban areas where people live, to the schools, to the mosques, you name it, and draw our conflict with our armed soldiers into those areas with the hopes that there will be a high civilian casualty rate to mar the name of the IDF and Israel and so on and so forth. So that's their strategy. That's how they do it. That's how they operate. That's their MO. Now, I want to also go into another point here. In contrast to this gentleman that we just read his quote, we have also another individual with a completely different opinion. So this time it's from a U.S. Special Forces veteran of the United States Armed Forces. He served as a Green Beret. He's got 15 years of experience in the 3rd Special Forces Group. And what he claimed, his name's Alan Shibaro. And this guy I really want to highlight, by the way, not because I want to name bash this individual, but because of the statement he made. And he made a public statement. If he hadn't made a public statement, it's a different thing. It's, your opinion, my opinion, what you say at home is all good and fine. But when you go out public and you use your military experience and background to strengthen the claims of what you're saying, that's a problem. Like me, like I said, I just told you, I have a 20-year experience in the armed forces. Today I serve in a special forces group in the reserves, in the IDF reserves, and I've been fighting in the war in Gaza, and so I can give a first-hand account of what we're doing there. Mr. Shibaro, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but he claimed and made this very public statement that really I found very troubling, and I had to address it. I have to address it. There's no way I'm going to sit back and let, like I said, people use their resumes to bash the state of Israel when I've been laying my life down on the line to A, defend my people, and then B, to defend the civilians of the strip of area where the terrorists have taken over and have full control and are ruining the lives of the Palestinians that are living there. So I care about the lives of my people, and I care about the Palestinians who are living in a living hell, like I pointed out here earlier. And that's their reality, and it's a sad reality. And it's something I don't wish on any of my enemies, to be honest. When I've seen what Hamas has done to completely hijack a whole generation of people, that's criminal. And they're the ones that need to be held accountable, and they're the ones that need to be destroyed. There's no question about it. And so, in any case, so Alan says, my name is Alan Shibaro. He talks about his background. And this was in February 20th in McKinney, Texas, north of Dallas. He says, I know war. And then he continues, what is going on in Palestine right now is not a war. It is the dehumanization, it is the genocide, it is the ethnic cleansing of a specific people to take their land. This is wrong, and there's nothing more American than speaking out against what's wrong. Wow. So that's a mouthful, right? So you just made a very, very jam-packed statement against based, again, because he also says it in very general terms, right? Against what people? Who are the people you're talking about in Palestine? Do you mean Israel? Like, what are you talking about, right? So he makes these very, very vague kind of statement, but also very strong. And based on what I saw here, it was quite clear to me, because then I saw him later in some rally with the Palestinian flag, where apparently he's making he's there in one of the public rallies, the pro-Palestine, free Palestine from the river to the sea, rallies that have been happening all over the world. And when I see somebody with his caliber and with his background, and I'm telling you, this dude has a very, very respectful military record. This is somebody that I've listened to and followed on social media, and because of his background and because of his, leading by example in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and having one of the highest black belts in Special Forces community. I mean, this dude, okay, he's accomplished, right? And for people in my field of security, defense, military, it's something that we look up to. And when I saw him make this statement, I was like, dang, that's messed up. That is so messed up. It is misinforming a public. It's making a very strong statement, and it's only adding to the growing anti-Semitism that is happening in the world today. For people who are not aware, we're aware, the Jewish people are aware, because we're the ones who've been the brunt of the growing anti-Semitism on college campuses all over America. And this is before October 7th. But post-October 7th, like I said, the victims of this horrible attack on Jews, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Okay, I'm not trying to drum this up and make it to something more than it is. That's a fact. When that is what we experience as a people, and then you have the gall to attack us and to make these kind of claims against us, that's insane. Why would we commit genocide against another people? And like I pointed out, if we wanted to commit genocide, they wouldn't risk my life and all my brothers' lives, and the gentleman that has laid down his life for the state of Israel, that fell in combat and have died. Okay, we've had over 200 soldiers, IDF soldiers, who have died in combat, okay, to defend our country. And then you go and make a statement like this, all right? And we defend against Hamas, not fighting civilians. We target Hamas, not civilians. And the fact that Hamas, like I said, puts their defensive positions in mosques, in schools, and just now we did another raid on the Shifa hospital in northern Gaza, which, by the way, we were there when we first went into the Strip, operated there. And I remember when we were there and how the information that came back to us, that they're using a hospital with terror tunnels, and where hostages were being held in the basement of the hospital and in the most horrific conditions, and that the staff, the hospital staff, were rejoicing when the terrorists were bringing in our hostages as war booty, and parading them into the hospital, and the staff, the hospital staff, are rejoicing, right? This is a first-hand testimony by our hostages that were returned. And we went back to Shifa Hospital because, well, what the terrorists did not expect, okay, they think that, if we move, from one area and we clear it and whatever, that we're not going to, that we're not setting traps for you, let's put it that way, okay? We set up our traps to identify where the enemy is going to try to retake area, and we did that on purpose. By the way, that's part of our tactics, and the tactics work. Now we have, after that encounter with the terrorists at the Shifa Hospital, there were over, if I remember correctly, it's like over 60 were killed, and like 300 held hostage, over 300 taken captive from the fighting there in the Shifa Hospital. So now we have a bunch of terrorists that we've held captive that we're going to interrogate, of course, to try to get more information, more intel as to where our hostages are, where, the layout of the terrorist operations in the Strip, and so on and so forth. Plus the elimination of a bunch of other war fighters that are, like I said, they're making hell for the Palestinians who live in the Gaza Strip. So that's our reality right now. That's what we've been doing, and what we've actually been doing, not contrary to what the media has been saying. And another thing I want to point out, guys, war is hell. Okay, if you just listen to the latest Sean Ryan show, not the latest, but I think it's the 100th episode. Mr. Tim Kennedy gets to tell about his military experience and his background and how hellish war is. And he was here in Israel, by the way, with a team trying to help get Americans out from Israel during in the very beginning of the war, where flights were grounded and so on and so forth, and they needed logistics to get people out, and so on. And so this is somebody who was also here in Israel, and he also saw firsthand with their guys, had seen firsthand what the terrorists did in the Jewish communities that they had witnessed and saw and so on. And so these are people that know what war is. And in contrast to Alan, Tim was here, like I said, with his team. And they saw boots on the ground, what happened. They saw the reality here. And you don't see them talking about the genocide that the IDF is committing. Instead, one of the statements that he made in the interview, by the way, which really stuck with me, and I wrote it down, he says that there is no moral equivalency. There's winning or losing. That's it. And that's so true. There is no moral equivalency here. Quit trying to talk about moral equivalency, because that's another thing that that everybody's trying to claim. They just come in and throw their Molotov cocktails, throw their stones. They don't have big tanks. Where's the moral equivalency? What? What they did on October 7th, the terrorists and the civilians that took part in the horrors that were done to our people. Listen, the IDF has not went and raped and burnt little children in ovens in getting back at our enemy. You want to talk about moral equivalency? Okay, that's nonsense. All there is, and like Tim pointed out, there's either winning or losing. That's it. Meaning, when you're being under attacked by a foreign threat to your country, to your sovereignty, all that matters is that you win against that threat. And today, in modern warfare and in modern public mindset, we're so soft and we're so afraid of war and death and this and that we're willing to let our people suffer more because we don't want to appear being too aggressive, too ugly, too overpowering of our enemy. And that's just stupid, guys. That is absolutely stupid. The only reason why the Nazis were stopped in World War II, why the Japanese were stopped in World War II, is because the United States unleashed atom bombs on the enemy to end it. What they could have done is let the war draw out, right? Like we're doing right now. We're letting the conflict draw out because we want to avoid civilian casualties. That's what the IDF is doing. So we're doing exactly what the world wants. Okay, we could have eliminated the enemy with just a few, massive bombings, but it's going to also include a bunch of innocent Palestinians being bombed and killed, and we would have ended it much faster. That's not what Israel is doing. We're literally doing what the world expects, and yet we're the ones who are being accused of genocide and war crimes and whatnot. Listen, I'm not here to make you feel happy, to make you feel good and cozy and happy. All right, I'm just going to tell you the truth, the way I see it. And if you have an issue with that, then tough. We just see things differently, and that's it. That's all there is to it. I don't owe you anything. I don't owe the United Nations. I don't owe the United States. I don't owe Russia or our Arab enemies around us. We don't owe you nothing. What I owe is to my people, is safety, security, freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Okay, this is what we owe to ourselves. And that's the same for anybody in the world. Wherever you're from, you don't owe anyone anything outside of your country. You don't owe them anything. What you owe is to yourselves is what I just said. Okay, is to fight for those freedoms, to fight for those ideals. They're important to you. And guess what? For the jihadists, this is what's important to them. It's to spread Islam and to convert everyone and to do it by the sword. And at least they are willing to do what it takes to fight for what they believe in. And I respect them for that. I know where they stand. Okay, they're not talking from two sides of their mouth. Although in the propaganda, that's a different story. But the true jihadists, okay, I know where they stand. The true patriot should also be the one that you know where they stand. Okay? I am a true patriot of the state of Israel, the people of Israel, and the defense of the state of Israel. And I will stand to defend against whoever that threat is. And we will do what we need to do. We don't owe anyone any explanations as to how we did what we did or why we did what we did. Like I said, all that matters is that we defend what is truly ours and our true freedoms and our civilians and so on. And so, any case, and here's the thing: the world loves to support Israel when we're beat down. I don't know if you guys noticed that. On October 7th and the following days after that, like the first few hours or days, people were like, oh, that's horrible. And you saw newscasters crying and all this stuff, right? From the horrors that they saw. But shortly after that, when the IDF started to go into action, when we went into action and were given the green light to fight the terrorists, whoa, Israel, we're not with you anymore. We don't support you anymore. So the world, and so what I'm pointing out is the world is growing in its anti-Semitic views. And the bottom line is, you just, like I said, just be truthful. You hate Jews, just say it. Don't hide behind these clever slogans and, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. Then you literally are like the Nazis. What you just claimed is that this area needs to be Judenrein, free from Jews. That's what the Nazis did, by the way. Let's exterminate this region from the true evils, which are the Jew, right? From the river is from the Jordan River. Sea is the Mediterranean, is the Med. So from Jordan to the Med, that's the only strip of land Jews have in the world for a safe haven. That's it. We have no other place in the world. And like I pointed out, there's a growing number of anti-Semitism and hatred towards Jews. They don't feel free and safe anywhere in the world. And what you guys are claiming is that from the river to the sea, free Palestine? Really? It's the only place in the world where minorities, okay, that used to live here under other nations, if it was Turkey, if it was the Islamic, different Islamic rulers that were here, okay, after the Byzantine period, the Christian period, so you have the Byzantines, the Muslims, the Turks, the British, okay, under every one of those occupations, okay, because they occupy this territory, right? Under every one of those, Jews were oppressed, minorities were oppressed, like the Druze, like the Cherkessians, like the whoever, okay, that are all living here, including Bedouins. Jews come here. We, based on our ancestral right to reestablish our homeland and to build our homes again that have been destroyed by all of these entities that have been ruling here, living here for all this time, and most of this area was desolate. But when we came back, all of a sudden Arabs wanted to come back because there was work to be had here, because there was Jewish entrepreneurship, because we were making things grow, and all the weeds that were on all the hilltops, because the Muslims didn't care about this land, the Turks didn't care about this land enough to do much with it. But when Jews came here, and we were just a small bunch, and we grew, then we reestablished and rebuilt and so on. And then the Arabs, like I said, came, And then all of a sudden, the contentions happened in the early 20s. Okay, this is before the State of Israel. The early 20s, Arab uprisings and pogroms against Jews, 30s, and leading up into the 40s. And then we finally get strong enough and we declare independence. The United Nations also agrees with the League of Nations declaration of this region being the Jewish homeland. Okay, in San Remo, 1920, this is what the League of Nations agreed. Read history. Nobody really likes to talk about that, by the way. And then it was officiated or finalized in 1922. 1922, San Remo was put into international law. And what the UN resolution was in 1947, just before Israel was declared a state, was to try to make another compromise because they'd already cut off all of modern-day Jordan. 75% of the state of Israel that was supposed to be for Jews was given off, and another country was created by a minority group that ruled it and have been ruling till today. And that's why, if you want to talk about where Palestinians are not free and don't have all their rights, that's actually in Jordan, because the majority of the Arabs who identify as Palestinian, they live there. So, any case, and they're ruled by a Hashemite king, and who's like 20% of the ethnic representation of the modern state of Jordan. Okay, so that was cut off. All right, and so that's the thing, is like we already gave up. And talk about two-state solution. There's your two-state. Jordan is Palestine. Do you want to have a Palestinian state? The majority of those who recognize themselves as or identify as Palestinian, they're actually Jordanian or Egyptian. Arabs. That's what they are. That's their ethnicity. There isn't such a thing as a Palestinian, by the way. Big shocker. Palestine is a propaganda thing that is being pushed and has been pushed since Yasser Arafat. He was the one that really pushed for this. He's the one that really made this into a popular theme to unite the Arabs that had been living in this region. Okay, so in like 1964, I believe it is, give or take, is when Yasser Arafat creates the Palestinian people, the people, okay, the Palestinian. They can't even say phonetic. They can't use the word P in Arabic. The Arabs living here can't say P. So that's another ironic, the irony, right? We're Palestinian. We're Palestinian. You mean, can you say Palestinian? You can't say Palestinian. Who's the first Palestinian king? Like, let's ask some simple questions. Who's the first Palestinian king? Okay, like ruler. What's the capital of Palestine? What's the first capital? Where was it? And when did you establish it? I can tell you when the kingdom of Israel was established, okay, by King Saul. I can tell you when Jerusalem became the capital of that Jewish kingdom, okay, or Judean at the time, right? Any case, so not going to get into that. That's another topic for another time. But what I'm saying is that there are those who are making some very serious claims of genocide. I served in the Gaza Strip, did not commit genocide. None of my men committed genocide. Never saw anyone commit genocide. Yet the whole world likes to talk about this as if it's a thing. Well, have you been to Gaza? Have you fought in Gaza like we were? Well, then you should keep your opinion to yourself if that's not the case. The gentleman that I want to highlight on today's podcast is a really good friend. His name's Nir Maman. And so now that, like I said, kickstarting this new podcast, I want to give you, as the first interviewee for our podcast, Nir Maman has been serving in the IDF many years. He was part of the counterterrorist unit called the unit. How do you say it in English? Counterterrorist unit. Actually, that's the unit, and it's Unit 707. You can Google it. This unit develops techniques and strategies of warfare, how to clear rooms, what kind of new developments we can use for the warfighters who are in the tip of the spear of our wars, tier 1 units and so on of the IDF. And so this is Nir's background, where he served in the IDF and then has been working in North America for many years with law enforcement, with other government agencies, training and what have you, and has been doing this. And he's been doing this for many years. Nir is a like legend in the Special Forces community, I would say, for the IDF, and is a legend for many of those who have gone through his training and have learned some of the best tactics on how to be a better warrior, be a better defender, be a better officer, and being able to negotiate all of the most complex scenarios that you'll run into as a law enforcement agent, where he has been training, like I said, in North America and Canada, United States for many years now. Nir came here to join in the defense and the war effort, and he spent, I think it was 3.5 months in Hebron. So like I said, it's a multi-front war that we've been fighting. Everybody's mainly focusing on Gaza, but where he ended up countering the terrorists is in the Hebron Hamas headquarters. So in other words, where Hamas in the West Bank, or in Judea Samaria, where their headquarters is in that territory in the heart of Israel, other than the Gaza Strip, is in Hebron. So he and his unit were countering all the terrorists there, because there were many terrorist activities and attempts to carry out terrorist attacks on Israel during this whole time period. Spent, like I said, I think it was 3.5 months fighting those guys there. Went home, and then his unit, where he originated from, this specialty unit that I told you, the counterterrorist unit. They called him up and said, "Hey, we're going to need you to help in the war effort in Gaza, where we're going in, and we have a lot of high value targets, and are basically given the green light to go and take out all these terrorists." So while he was in Gaza, they spent, I think it was like over 2 weeks in Gaza. His unit alone, his division alone, took out, I believe he said, like about 60 terrorists out of the about 300 terrorists that were killed in the collective division that he was a part of. But his platoon alone killed 600 armed terrorists of Hamas, and gave firsthand account, of what they're doing there, propaganda, what have you. And so right when he got out, I went to go meet with him. He was trying to recuperate and get back to civilian life, and to detox from all the poisons of the air and the nasty stuff that you run into in Gaza, and just get all that death and grime and diseases off of you, basically, and readjust before heading back home. So I was able and privileged to sit down with my dear brother here and fellow warrior in the central Israel, where he was, like I said, recuperating, and did a field interview with him. So with no further ado, let's cut into this interview, and we will listen to Nir Maman's firsthand account from his time and his background in telling his story as a fellow warrior here in the IDF.